G'day guys and gal. As much as GW likes to pretend every faction in the right context is equal, that's a bunch of baloney. A number of factions, such as the Eldar or the Tau, only exist because they're a bigger fish to fry, and they act like little hedgehogs, small and harmless, but if you try eat them, you'll end up with a mouthful of spikes. However, trying to determine who the heaviest hitter or threat in the entire setting is a bit of a challenge. The Imperium has the most space, Chaos has literal gods, the leagues of Votann have intact STCs, the Necrons have the best tech and potential, the Tyranids could either be on their last push or just the tip of their pinky. However, there is enough clues in the lore for us to determine exactly which faction is actually the greatest threat to the setting and thereby could be considered the most powerful. Before we get started, in 2026, I really want to dial down the amount of sponsors I work with, as I know it's a bit AIDS getting cum blasted by Manscaped or VPN ads all the time. Even though I am very selective with who I work with, and I literally have to be a customer of them for me to agree to work with them. So I'm going to be reducing the sponsors to just a couple, because I'd much rather share and promote with you guys stuff I've personally built and founded, because then I can make the segments more unhinged, more genuine, and if you do decide to buy something, it goes a lot further to supporting the channel. So with that said, 90+ subs baby, I created a supplement company because I was sick of shitty snake oil supplements with ineffectual doses, and I was also sick of having to take like 5 different caps from 5 different supplement bottles to support one biomarker. So instead, I created supplements that take out all the filler and just use science-backed ingredients that work synergistically to get insane results. Now, instead of just talking about the test booster again today, because while I know testosterone is awesome, I wanted to talk about my personal favorite from the range, the sleep support. 1/3 of people don't get enough sleep to be healthy. 2/3 feel like their sleep isn't good enough, but most of the time it isn't because we try pull all-nighters or do cocaine on a Wednesday at 11 PM. Our lives are just so hyper-stimulating that it's hard to wind down, and even when we do, it's harder to get a deep sleep. So instead of trying to Brian Johnson your sleep and take out all the fun, take the sleep support. This thing is like crack. Not only does it help you relax and wind down without the sedative effect of sleep medication, but you actually sleep better. Your REM and deep sleep improve, which we've proven in human trials. It also reduces the time it takes to fall asleep and also reduces wake-up events during the night. The coolest part is that it's great for anyone, as you can tailor your dose. Take 1 cap if you sleep okay but you want to optimize it, take 2 caps if sleeping is difficult but you aren't an insomniac, take 3 caps if you want to knock yourself out. Again, all natural ingredients. If you take this and it doesn't massively improve your sleep, I will bite off my own dick. Can't say that in a normal sponsored segment, eh? Use my link or code Majorkill for 20% off your order. This applies to the entire range, not just the sleep support. Today we'll go over which faction in the setting of 40k is actually the greatest threat to the rest, and thereby could be considered the most powerful. Let's get into it. Now, all factions have their strengths and weaknesses. The Imperium is so vast that it struggles to bring its full might to bear. The Tau are the Tau. Look guys, I do actually like the Tau, not in a gay way, but their entire empire was almost defeated by a small force of Death Guard, and they only won because their new god intervened on their behalf. This force of Death Guard only represents a part of one traitor legion, of which there are 9 others, which then again only make up a part of the overall Chaos faction, which is just one of many factions that are an existential threat to the Tau. So maybe I should start this off by just listing the factions that aren't much of a threat. Firstly, the Tau. Because most of the galaxy is already occupied by some faction or another, and because they don't have reliable warp travel, the Tau is struggling to expand their borders. They only really exist because they punch above their weight, and it's worth more trouble trying to exterminate them than it's worth. Think back to the hedgehog example. Yes, as a lion you could just chomp them and crush their bones, but then your mouth is full of spikes and it hurts and it sucks, and you didn't really get much out of it. The one thing I will say about the Tau and their threat level is this: their technology is evolving at an astonishing rate, experiencing breakthrough after breakthrough. They are very close to being able to travel just as far and fast as the Imperium without even needing navigators. Their battlesuits can now go toe-to-toe in melee with Space Marines, and if they continue this rate of development, it's likely they'll soon reach Necron level tech or even beyond. That is, of course, if the Chaos Gods or the Emperor don't shart and sneeze and then envelop the Tau Empire in a big warp storm by accident or something. In a similar vein, the Eldar just don't register as a galactic threat in the slightest. The only thing they have over the Tau is that they can reach all parts of the galaxy and have a vested interest in tipping the scales and interfering in affairs. For example, in the Horus Heresy, the Imperium won because Vulcan was able to reach Terra and become the guardian of the gate, slaying Magnus. Without Vulcan, Magnus would have been free to drain the Emperor and wear him down, until the Emperor broke and the Golden Throne failed. No confrontation on the vengeful spirit. Or Malcador would have had to take the throne earlier, letting the Emperor go kick Magnus's ass, but then not having Malcador for when the Emperor needed to face Horus. Vulcan only made it to Terra because of the Eldar. However, none of the Eldar factions are a threat to anyone in any meaningful way. The Craft Orders are heavily limited by Spirit Stones. The Dark Elder can only exist in real space for a short time, only enough for raids or single battles, and the Exodites are just a bunch of tree huggers that don't even have spaceships. All because of Slaanesh breathing down their buttholes. Even in the hypothetical situations where everything goes right for the Eldar, such as them awakening Yened and removing the curse of Slaanesh from their souls, they still wouldn't instantly become a galactic threat. When they fell, they still lost their empire and most of their tech, which they cannot get back. Their populations are still small. Yes, they would get a huge buff, especially the Dark Eldar, who can now happily stay in real space and could now also use their psychic powers again. But they still wouldn't be the top dogs, and this is only if they got everything they wanted, which you know in GW they never will. From here on out it gets interesting. The Orks are often seen as the punching bag of the setting, however Orks can also be terrifying and extremely powerful. During the War of the Beast, the Orks ascended to become the most powerful faction in the galaxy, somehow, and then literally had the Imperium at its mercy. Their leaders, the Beasts, were physically stronger than the Primarchs and exhibited such intense wild power that the collective intelligence of the entire species rose sharply. Like they started using attack moons. It was only due to bullshit hacks that the Imperium managed to beat them. However, that was then and this is now, but it's important to look at a faction's potential to be a threat as well. Currently, Ghazghkull is the only thing keeping the Orcs scary and relevant as a genuine threat. Gaz is slowly becoming a beast, with many theorizing he may soon become a Krork. If this does indeed happen, and the Orcs once get intelligent and use attack moons, then they could become a genuine threat again. However, that is a lot of ifs, so they don't quite rank too highly yet. The Leagues of Votann are an interesting one. On one hand, they were more than content to just sit in the core of the galaxy and mine worlds and hoard resources. However, with the opening of the Great Rift, alongside a few other issues, the Leagues have been forced out of their homes slowly and having more and more encounters with the other factions, often in hostile ways. What makes the League so powerful is that they have intact STCs. STCs being these super blueprints created by humanity at the peak of their power. The Imperium is obsessed with finding these lost STC fragments, each fragment showing the blueprint for one or a handful of technologies. However, the Leagues have fully intact STCs, allowing them to create and use technology from the Dark Age, which was the golden age of humanity. However, their STCs, which they call their ancestor cores, are starting to get a bit of dementia and aren't operating at their best. However, it's less about their STCs and more about the fact that the Leagues of Votann would rather jackhammer their balls into dust than try conquer the galaxy or kill everyone. Dudes just want to mine and I respect it. So although powerful, they aren't too threatening, so as long as you aren't living on a planet they want to mine. Okay, now we're at the heavy hitters. The Imperium is a really hard one to quantify, because being the greatest threat and also being the most powerful aren't mutually exclusive. You could be an 8-foot tall billionaire martial art bodybuilder who is just doing his thing, but if there is a 4-foot tall weak ass bitch who wants to spike your protein shake with rat poison, then they are a much greater threat despite you being way more powerful. The Imperium is the most powerful faction in the setting, there is no doubt. They have the most worlds, most resources, largest armies, most ships, their heroes are dope, and they get shit done. It's the reason why they can get attacked on all fronts by every other faction simultaneously and still not only survive but often win. However, in terms of a galactic threat, they are and they aren't. Like, they are a threat in terms of the fact that they would like to genocide the Necrons, Tyranids, Orks and Chaos, and the Tau and Eldar if we're being honest, but their capacity to do so is very limited. They are also reasonably easy to do diplomacy with by 40k standards. Think of them like a massive godlike Leviathan and the other factions as a bunch of sharks, taking bites then swimming away, wearing the Leviathan down. There are too many sharks for the slow Leviathan to catch. If it could bring its full might on a single shark, then that shark would be fucked, but it can't. People say, well, if the Emperor recovers and wakes up, it's GG. But if the Emperor was walking around during the Great Crusade and it still took 200 years to conquer the galaxy, despite him having greater armies and less threats, then I don't see how him getting up right now would be an insta-win for the Imperium. Plus, the Grey Knights have instructions to smack the Emperor if he tries to, instructions from the Emperor. So while the Imperium is the most powerful, I really don't think they are the greatest threat. The Necrons are an interesting one. They technically are the most powerful in many ways. They have the best tech, are basically unkillable, don't need to sleep or eat, have no reliance or vulnerability to the warp. They're also actively trying to implement a solution that, if successful, will defeat Chaos, the Eldar, most of the Imperium, and fuck up the Tyranids as well. That solution being the Pariah Nexus. So are they truly the greatest threat? Well, they could be if they stopped killing each other. Nobody hates a Necron more than themselves. Sure, the Imperium helped slow down the Pariah Nexus, but a big part of why it took an L was because Imhotep the Stormlord ganked the Silent King. However, that doesn't change the fact that the Necrons are one of the few factions who actually have a clear win condition for 40k and are actively trying to implement and have the means to implement it, making them a massive threat. Probably the most unknown threat in the setting are the Tyranids. You may have seen one of these images pop up that implies that the Tyranid forces currently in the galaxy are a mere scout party, a vanguard, to the oncoming Tyranid onslaught. If true, everyone is fucked and nothing matters, as even a united galaxy with the Emperor standing back to back with Khorne wouldn't be able to survive this. However, neither of these images are actually canon. One is a fan art, the other is taken from a non-canon 40k game. So we don't actually know if the Tyranids have a shitload more bioforms on the way that are about to eat our ass, or if they have committed the majority of their strength to the Milky Way, and this is about as scary areas they will get. One thing that implies that most of their strength has already arrived is that when the Great Rift opened, it genuinely knocked the hive mind out. If the hive mind only had a fingertip in the galaxy, the rift shouldn't have done too much. However, if most of its presence was here, then it makes total sense why it would be such a kick to the balls for it. However, even if 100% of the Tyranids are in the Milky Way, they still pose a massive threat. Their ability to snowball is wild, and they are almost impossible to properly wipe out. Before each large battle, they will splinter their main fleet so that if they lose the battle, the legacy of that hive fleet will live on and rebuild itself. Whenever the Tyranids eat a world, it theoretically becomes salvageable, but the terraforming takes centuries. Basically, the Tyranids are an infestation that can only seemingly be treated and pushed back, not eradicated, and if they do manage to properly snowball, then there isn't too much that could stop them from eating everything. And finally, Chaos. Chaos is a bit of a yo-yo when it comes to being a threat. During the Heresy, it nearly corrupted the entire galaxy and achieved total victory. Then for the next 10,000 years, it was a wet fart that was so weak that even when the Imperium was ruled by literal retards who seemed hell-bent on sabotaging everything, Chaos still couldn't escape the Eye of Terror. However, now they have ripped the galaxy in two, are trying to unlock some hectic shit that would give them obscene power, and the traitor Primarchs are coming back left, right, and center at the head of their replenished legions. Chaos also has the most bullshit hacks out of anyone, able to pull copious amounts of shit from their asses. In a similar vein to the Necrons, if Chaos completely united, there isn't much the Imperium could do, and with Abaddon getting close to his goals and the Primarchs on both sides returning, it's really starting to seem like Horus Heresy 2 Electric Boogaloo could be coming back, but this time with Necrons, Tyranids, and all other hectic shit involved. So with that said, which faction is currently the greatest threat to the setting of 40k? Well, the Imperium is currently the most powerful, or the Tyranids depending if their main fleet is still in the way, with the Necrons having the most potential to be the most powerful. However, in terms of threat, I'm honestly going to give it to Chaos. They have cut the galaxy in two, are pursuing multiple endgame avenues, have almost all of their Primarchs in play or about to be in play, and incredibly well resourced. Their weakness of being stuck in the Eye of Terror is no longer a factor, and demons are manifesting in record numbers. Out of all the factions, they're the only ones who made a decisive, setting-shaking blow, and who seem poised to make another one. They are the current apex predator of the setting, at least until the Lion and Gilliman unite, or Russ and Korax return to the setting as warper monsters that hunt demon Primarchs for sport. Yeah, I'm pretty keen for that. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up a Natty Plus sub. I recommend the ultimate sleep support. That shit will change your life. Join this one for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.